Okay, good morning, everyone. So today I'm just going to mention a few things. So most of these days are the same schedule. Today we have one little difference. We're going to be doing, instead of the yoga class, a breathing exercise, which is going to be a sort of preparation for the breath session that we'll be doing tomorrow with Chad Charles. And Chad has an amazing way of sort of bringing us into what I would call like a non-dual sort of breath. So it's an interesting process where this idea that we can we can control the breath with our mind, and yet we can be breathed. And wherever we start in that process, these two come together, and we end up in this sort of merged breath state. And so this breath session tomorrow, it's just an opportunity for very deep clearing. So if you can check out that breath session today, because it is sort of a prerequisite or a preparation for that tomorrow. So I'd like to, first of all, I think today I'm going to talk a little bit about the stages that we go through in meditation, the stages of absorption. This is very related to those stages that I talked about in self-inquiry as well, but it's just another lens or another language construct to kind of point to the same phenomena that unfolds on the path when we have this intention to awaken. But before I do that, there's a few things I'd like to expand on. We touched on a few things last night in the talk before self-inquiry, and just like to revisit a few of those things, just because they're important topics, and I felt like they weren't completely explored or conveyed last night. So there's this question about the benefit of awakening, and there's this sort of phenomena where people get a glimpse of awakening, but then they just kind of go back to life, So there's this, it's very common where it's like this sense that I've got it and I've lost it, or someone awakens and then it seems that the ego appropriates the experience. So there may be a glimpse or a full awakening, but then the mind comes back and the ego appropriates it. The ego will say, I did it, I awakened. This can be the beginning of a spiritual persona. Sometimes that spiritual persona is, it can have, it could be as powerful or more powerful than just a regular ego. So when that spiritual persona comes online, we might start writing books and even making movies, and it happened in my journey for many years. So we, it's, and I think it's I wouldn't say it's inevitable, but it seems to be a part of the path, So it's very possible to delude ourselves, very, very possible, very likely. So, does that mean it's not worth it? because as we're realizing, it's a bit of work what we're doing here. Is all of this worth the effortless effort? You know, so I would say, you know, looking at myself, my own journey, and watching people go on the path, I would say, the real measure of the benefit of all of this is that when you look back at your life, there's less suffering. So you look back, and it's very simple. Like we want to optimize this whole human journey. So if I look back 25 years ago, when I started out on the path, there was exponentially more suffering and identification back then. In fact, now, like, I know who was suffering back then. It's always the character that's suffering. Awareness was never suffering. So this is it's such a, it comes down to this paradox, like in that sense, of awareness, always already free. In that sense, I was never bound and never liberated. And this is what is revealed when you find out who you are. You find out that, it's the mistaken identity. You were never bound, any more than someone watching a TV show, watching a TV drama, that they're not bound by the characters in the show. You might get caught up in the show for a while, but then it's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'm the awareness. I'm watching. I'm just here for the show. Yeah. So, so the benefit of all of this is freedom from suffering, freedom from this delusion of identification. Like I said last night, the possibility of living a life that is not scripted, it's not unconscious or robotic, with just, these patterns just playing out. So it's a real life, a more real or more direct life. Some of the Christian mystics talk about, or even in the Bible, they talk about the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is here, but we don't see it because we're living through that false self, the false I. Yeah, and there's another benefit to awakening, or a whole other dimension or aspect of spirituality, which we've touched upon, and this is the evolutionary part, the part of growing that inner lotus, offering other possibilities within the game, within the matrix, exploring all other facets of all that is. So these possibilities for becoming, experiencing higher worlds, other dimensions of ourselves. Yeah, so, my role here is not to be a cheerleader for awakening or to convince anyone of anything. I know the website is called Awaken the World, but this is not some goal. It's just happening. It's like the current of a river going in a direction, and eventually that current will come to awakening. All things flow from and return to that one source. It's like that, the image of the torus. Everything is this involution and evolution continuously, and it's all just happening. It's all somehow part of this plan. So what I'm doing here, I'm just a signpost pointing for those at a certain point in the journey. There's certain conditions that make this awakening possible or more likely to happen. Of course, it can happen in life. People awaken in all different scenarios. Whenever there's an interrupt in the pattern of view, there's a potential opening. Whether that's a death or loss and sickness, or even a great joy, or something that interrupts the regular habit pattern of me. But also, without the Dharma, without the wisdom teachings of the great spiritual masters who come before us, it's more difficult. These are beautiful gifts on the path that we can use. Without understanding the mechanism of how identification happens, it's difficult to remain awake. So yeah, and last night we talked a little bit about choosing as well, and I'd like to maybe revisit that. So when we're in the samadhi state, when we're in direct experience, it's beyond choosing and non-choosing. It's not that choosing isn't happening, or it's not that things aren't happening. Of course, things are happening. In one sense, the language is very slippery here, but in one sense, there's no chooser and chosen. There's no more sense of self and world. It's all one arising in consciousness as consciousness. So you could say like a living conscious energy, full and empty, luminous emptiness. So in that state, it's incredible watching the avatar doing its thing. It's like watching a spider building its web, or something natural. There's this sense of ease and flow, perfection to it. So on a practical level, when we go back to life, and I'll just give an example in my own life, just to try and make it clear, because it really is a sticky point for some people. They think, if I go back to my life, like I have to choose, I have to, it's not practical, and but it actually is practical. What's not practical is this dualistic mind that thinks it knows. It's actually the least effective way to live our lives is through that little filter. It was never. I feel like it's been misplaced or misappropriated. It's not really the tool for living life or for directing life. It was meant more as an interface with the world, which it's great for that, but you don't want the tool to become the thing that is dictating the direction in life. So I'll share this example. When I had an awakening experience, or a first Kensho at a Zen center, and for me it was like coming out of Plato's cave into the world. It was like I'd been living in this little cave, looking at the shadows on the wall, and suddenly I came out of that and realized there's a whole world outside of that. And then, of course, I went back to my life after the Zen Center, and you know, there's really no going back once you come out of that box. You know, the energy doesn't really allow it. You know, once the energy is free, it opens up, and you know, and I felt like when I went back into the old pattern was there, and I felt that if I'd stayed in that pattern, you know, something would have happened. That like the body probably would have become sick, or you know, there would have been an energetic correction of some sort if I had stayed in that old pattern. The energy would make a correction. So there was a dismantling of the old life, of the marriage, relationships, all of that, and this is different for everyone. And at that point in my journey, that's just the way it went, and it wasn't really a choice. You know, it was really like watching the energy choosing for me. And of course, the character could have chosen to stay in that pattern or made choices. But again, it's like that current of life was going in a different direction. So to me, this is what is meant by choiceless awareness. It's feeling that current of life. And it's only the little character that you know, it can choose to go against that current, but that's when we fall into suffering, because that current will always win. We can do the ego can do its little thing for a while, but eventually it's going down that river. Yeah. It's kind of like you know, for those who have practiced martial arts, and you know, I'm not a martial arts person, but one of my really good friends is an amazing martial artist and qigong teacher, and we have conversations about this stuff. And you know, in the martial arts tradition, you know, some of those traditions they trace back to the Shaolin tradition and the teachings of Bodhidharma. It's usually attributed back to him, and it's really the same. You know, Bodhidharma was a meditation teacher. You know, that's the foundation of Zen, goes back to that teacher, and it's all about dropping the little thinker. It's about coming into the samadhi state, letting the chi flow. So when you're doing martial arts, you're not thinking about the next move. You know, if you're thinking about the next move, you're already finished. You know, in a martial arts master, the energy flows from the intuition centers, you know, from the hara or the lower dantian, you know, from the heart, from the third eye. It's all in sync. The energy is all in sync. It's all in a dance. Yeah. So today, yeah, I think that's everything that I wanted to revisit from last night. And yeah, today I'm going to talk a bit about the stages of meditative absorption, and just try to convey the biggest mistake that people make on the path. There's really only one mistake that people make on the path, and it's really what perpetuates this whole game of I've got it, I've lost it, and that's when we mistake the experience, whatever state, whatever mind-body state, for the truth of who we are. So these peak experiences are, they're a blessing and a curse. The deepest experiences, within the human experience are, in one tradition they would call it Savakalpa Samadhi. So Savakalpa Samadhi is this, this quintessential union experience. So it's being one with all, one with everything, and it's the most fulfilling experience for for the human experience. It's if we, so for me it's that was what I came upon on my path first, was that union experience. And in my understanding now, I see that it's probably better for people to awaken to their true nature first, rather than having that union experience, because that union experience is so powerful. It's so, it is almost guaranteed to create the seeker. So for me, when I first experienced that, it was at a Vipassana center. And, at that time, I was a total beginner and of course didn't know who I was. I thought I was the Dan character. And so this experience comes, and it was everything that the character ever wanted. It was this beautiful union, being one with everything. I in that experience, I walked out of the Zendo, and the stars were there, and I was as much the stars as I was this character, or being with a tree. The tree was me. Everything was me, and in that state, the character thought, okay, this is it. This is, there was a sureness that this is it, and this is what, Jesus and the Buddha had experienced, and that was it. I did it, and I didn't know who I was, because I didn't know that I wasn't this character having just this experience, and of course, with all Savakalpa Samadhi, all of these merging experiences, they're temporary. So I lost it as quickly as I got it, and then the seeker was born. This desperation, as it slipped away, the seeker was born, and years went by. Years of everything that I could try and find, every sutra, every technique, exploring every tradition, and the more of that knowledge on the mind level, was being accumulated, the farther I got from it. And so that seeker eventually, it eventually got to a point where it's like it had tried every trick, it had done everything, and it wasn't until I got to the Zen center that seeker totally failed in all of its attempts to awaken, and eventually that that part of the mind that's always doing something, trying to make it happen, eventually it because of the conditions of no escape in a session that I was at, it dropped off. There was nothing the character could do to awaken. All the books and teachings and teachers I'd studied with were of no use, and in that moment, the mind was humbled. It realized it knows nothing, and when it comes to my true nature. So in that failure, in that dropping away, the conditions were right for awakening to happen, for that flip to happen. So this, this Savikalpa Samadhi, this union experience is described, potentially calls this Samprajnata Samadhi, or Samadhi with a seed. So it's Samadhi with a seed because there's still form, there's still a seed of form, or the self structure. So even though we go into this union, there's something that is reactivated, like a seed. The self comes back, it grows back. I don't think it really grows back, but it comes back. It's temporary, in other words. And in Buddhism, the correlate to this is the jhanas, the first 4 jhanas. So the jhanas are the stages of meditative absorption, and Patanjali actually divides these up in a very similar way. So he talks about different samadhis, and different yogis talk about all these different stages, or different samadhis, different levels of absorption. They don't all line up necessarily. They're really sort of pointing in a way to the same phenomena, but there are differences between them. But I would say, the correlation between Patanjali's teaching and Buddhism is about 90%. It's very, very close, which is amazing. And so these, so in Buddhism, they have the material jhanas. The first 4 jhanas are the material jhanas, which are Savikalpa Samadhi. So they're leading to this union, and then there are the immaterial jhanas. So the out of the body, when the body, mind and body, sort of progressively drop off, we enter into these immaterial jhanas. So with each jhana, and jhana just means, it's the word in Pali. Jhana is a Pali word, which is the language of the Buddha, but the Sanskrit is dhyana. So this is the dhyana is the it's meditation, essentially. It's the 7th limb of Patanjali's yoga system. So jhana, dhyana, in Zen, the word Zen is that it's dhyana or jhana or chan. So all of these traditions, it really is meditation, and it's a very particular meaning of meditation. So it's this sort of if you really trace that word back to its roots, in Pali, it means to burn up. So meditation is to burn up. When we're just sitting, when we're meditating, we're burning up the samskaras. We're burning up the illusion, or the impurities, whatever you want to call that. The attachments to self, to the conditioned self. So with each jhana, there is a sort of dropping of some aspect of the conditioned mind at each stage. And I'm not going to get really into the specifics. Like to me, the particular map that is set out in Buddhism, it's beautiful, but I don't like to set it out in a way that, like this is what's happening, or this is it, this is the truth. It's much better, I think, to just understand in a general way and discover these things within our own practice, discover them directly. So in a general way, what seems to be happening is, at the beginning of our practice, we have these hindrances, these preferences, the craving and aversion, and we begin to cultivate equanimity, and when we stop reacting to those preferences, the hindrances start to no longer become hindrances, but actually become a way to deepen our, deepen our practice. They are, really the way in, whether it's our pain or tiredness or, crazy monkey mind, whatever it is, by making it conscious. This is the way that we begin to free energy from the old pattern. So the first jhana is characterized by this sort of freeing of energy. There's in Pali they call it piti, which is it's sort of this energy that prana, whatever you want to call it. And there's usually, there's the beginning of a sense of it feels good. It feels good. We've been, usually at the beginning, it's like there's a lot of struggle happening in the mind, and then this energy sort of breaks through. So we go from dukkha to sukha. We go from unsatisfactoriness to a sense of satisfactoriness. And then, at this level, a new game starts to happen where the mind, starts learning that this can be produced, the energy, or this letting go, there's also a change in the state of consciousness as well. So this is a more preferable state. And it's, the preference becomes the next thing that we let go. So we let go of sukha, we let go of the satisfactoriness of this, because we, if once we do play this game long enough, we realize it's endless. If we're chasing sensation or we're chasing states, phenomena, there's no end to that. It's endless. So we start to get and the insights of impermanence. Impermanence is one of the great insights, and so we realize that these states are constantly changing. And this game of sensation, we can play that endlessly. So we start to let go of those preferences. Just let the states come and go. And so this is a deeper level of equanimity, and then we, so at each stage there's a dropping of some preference, some level of preference, some level of mind, and then we, if we continue, we start to see that the mind is, always dissatisfied. It's inherently dissatisfied. And when we catch it, when we make all of that conscious, then the mind starts to become single-pointed. These little waves or little movements start to settle down, and we come to this single-pointedness. And then again, so another layer of mind or another level of absorption is there, and And so the mind becomes single pointed, and then the energy starts to build. And in this energy building, we can come to a point where there's no longer this part of the mind that is distinguishing pain and pleasure. And quite often at this point, in the later jhana stages, like especially the fourth jhana, we come to a point, and often people will report, it's like the energy is just endless. It's just tireless energy. And it feels like you can sit forever when that energy is there. And then this is when, if we just continue to sit, then the mind and body will drop away. And this is where we enter into the immaterial jhanas. And those ones are usually not talked about too much because it's kind of pointless to talk about them. But there are levels of further dropping away. So we in these levels experiencing consciousness as infinite, and we come to these direct realizations or direct experiences of things that are to the mind don't even really make sense. So they, one of them, the later one is neither perception nor non-perception. So we come to these places where very subtle aspects of the self they drop away. So yeah, and and the concepts that we hold, the learning that we have around these things, it's very important to let that go. So everything I'm saying right now, we don't want to hold this as concepts. We don't want to have a mind that is searching for these things or trying to make these things happen. Simply by being present, all of this unfolds. And the only reason I'm talking about it is so that we just have a general sense of this unfolding. That we have a general sense of what this is, what this absorption is, so we can see in a general way that that we're going in this direction that the great teachers have explained and set out in these teachings. But we don't want to become dharma ridden. We don't want to have these concepts in our mind, and then it's like check boxes. I'm like, okay, I got first one, second one, and yeah, got that covered. Make it all happen. No, it just happens. It's just happening, and our the mind can be part of it. Of course, the mind is there for the journey, and to be able to speak about this unfolding is, I think it's helpful. If as long as we don't identify with the concepts, or with sometimes they say, mistaking the map for the actual territory. Or sometimes they say eating the menu. It's like, here's the menu, here's all the stuff, and it's like, yeah, I'm eating the menu. No, you want to know what is possible, but we want to we put down the menu and actually have the meal. So yeah. So Yeah, so I think I have a little video for the last 15 minutes, and it's really it's pointing to what I've just talked about letting go of the concepts around all of this, and it's a very, very direct pointing little video. So I will cue that up here shortly for you. Whether you believe there's an eternal soul, Atman, or you believe that there's no soul or no self, Anatman or Anatta, those beliefs are actually obstacles to realizing your true nature. For a person who holds on to such a belief, there is a conditioned knowing. Samadhi will remain elusive until identification with the belief is dropped. The ancient traditions called such conditioned mental patterns sankharas in Pali or samskaras in Sanskrit. The concept, if we're holding on to it, if we're adding it to our self-structure, becomes a limitation, an entrapment for inner energies, perpetuating an illusion of knowing, and it prevents us from engaging in the actual investigation that would lead to the direct contact with the mystery of existence. One of the greatest divides between spiritual systems is between those that believe in the existence of a soul and those that don't. Half of the spiritual masters use words like soul or Atman, and half talk about emptiness and no soul, Anatman, Anatta, or no self. The confusion and split between religions and teachings stems from the fact that language is inherently dualistic. We do not have language for describing non-duality. These difficulties were around since the time of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago. Many people are surprised when they discover that the Buddha never said that there is no self, and that he actually admonished those teachers who taught that there is no self. Those who teach only non-self do not become free. There's a story about a wanderer who directly asked the Buddha whether or not there is a self or a soul. The Buddha's answer was silence. He knew if he answered yes or no, he would mislead. We have forgotten this most important lesson. We've turned soul into a concept, into a subject for theology class. We've turned words like self or no self or God into concepts rather than allowing them to be revealed through sadhana, through direct realization of samadhi and prajna. In his later teachings, the Buddha actually spoke about an innermost essence, a self or soul which knows of no change and no death. He called it by various names, the true self or the true soul, the Buddha Dhatu or the Buddha principle, or the Tathagata Garbha, the embryonic Buddha nature latent within us. He described a hidden treasury present in all sentient beings. He says of this self, it is not true to say that all phenomena are devoid of self. The self is reality. The self is eternal. The self is virtue. The self is everlasting. The self is stable. The self is peace. No death can touch it. No harm can befall it. No unhappiness can blight it. It is as indestructible and radiant as a diamond. To some people this may sound monistic, but he's pointing entirely beyond monism and dualism, or any ism, beyond the limited mind's conceptual frameworks. He's pointing to the realm of nirvana, the cessation of vana, of vikalpa, of kleshas, vasanas, or karma, the cessation of unconscious patterns which bring about the limited sense of I. And it's the cessation of the attendant suffering. The Buddha said, the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death. The truth of our true nature is beyond the duality of the mind. It is beyond perception and non-perception. The Buddha points to a radical non-duality, beyond concepts of self and no self. It is this limited mind that creates the illusion of division and separation, birth and death, existence and non-existence. As the Zen master Dogen said, to realize it, we learn to meditate, which is to drop off mind and body. The path to liberation is to awaken beyond the mind level. The idea that there is no self is often conflated and confused with the Buddhist term anatta, which is not meant to be conceptual, but is a direct insight that comes through meditation. In Buddhism, there are said to be 3 great insights, or 3 marks of existence, which are realized experientially through meditation, and are not meant to be philosophical or intellectual discussion points. They are experienced through a stripping away or cessation of levels of mind. There's the realization of anicca, which is impermanence, the realization that everything is arising and passing away. There's the realization of anatta, that everything within the field of changing phenomena is empty of self. And there's dukkha, the realization that the self-structure is made of patterns of craving and aversion. It is a pattern of constant unsatisfactoriness. Through deep meditation and self-inquiry, which at a certain point are one and the same, we can come to make the unconscious mind processes conscious. And only then can we drop them. If they are unconscious, they keep repeating in the unconscious. The ancient practice that follows the perennial teaching requires us to stop reacting to our preferences, to stop fueling the patterns of craving and aversion, to let all phenomena arise and pass away without discriminating this or that. Everything within the field of change is anicca, impermanence, and we observe this impermanence. We penetrate and permeate this field of changing phenomena with our consciousness. Consciousness is the one thing that does not change, does not come and go. Consciousness is not a thing, and yet it is not nothing. Through meditation, consciousness and the field of changing phenomena unite and become one in samadhi, revealing your true eternal nature beyond duality, beyond thing and no thing. To this day, some teachers still proclaim no self as the highest truth about selfhood, and ironically, it becomes the bedrock of their conditioned belief structure. The idea of no self can become a sacred cow, tied to a spiritual persona with which one is identified. Spiritual bypassing is when you get caught in the idea of the transcendent. It's a way of avoiding what is sometimes called the shadow work, which is becoming free of samskaras or conditioned patterns that unconsciously rule one's life. To release samskaras, we have to have a complete experience of the sensations, feelings, and emotions that come up moment by moment, remaining equanimous and inwardly surrendered. We can train ourselves to become present, open, and equanimous through meditation, but it also must be applied to life. The more work we do on the cushion, the more feelings will come up in life, the more we will feel life, and we have to allow ourselves to feel life, to not turn away from anything that is arising. It requires being brutally honest with oneself, to observe how we desperately avoid the feelings that are unpleasant, or how persistently we will cling to the familiarity of patterns, how we defend the ego, how we make ourselves appear right or always in a good light, how we distract ourselves from discomfort, how we're constantly feeding the mind all sorts of entertainment to avoid that deep communion with the present moment. It's possible to be playing out our karma, stuck in archetypes, and hopelessly trapped in pattern, all the while proclaiming that there's no self, disconnected from the heart, while the ego remains in charge, certain that it's right in its worldview. If the ego construct thinks it knows the truth of who and what you are, then the deeper exploration stops. Your meditation or self-inquiry will become robotic. The moment you express who or what you are in words, and believe or identify with what you said, is the moment you've become ensnared once again in the dualistic mind. We may start talking about awakening as if we know, but it has become a memory, a pattern of conditioned thought, added to the self-structure. We might have a genuine samadhi experience, an awakening to our true nature, but in most cases, the mind will come back online, and the ego will craft language around the experience, make a story out of it, take ownership of it, and before we know it, it has appropriated our insight into our true nature. To stabilize and integrate samadhi requires countless awakenings, countless humblings of the mind, countless little deaths. It requires a steady sadhana, a continuous practice and vigilance to watch the mind day in and day out, constantly freeing the inner energy so that the inner lotus will grow and a rewiring process unfolds. A beginner's mind, a not knowing mind, a mirror mind, is the very essence of meditation and self-inquiry, and it is the path to knowing oneself. To be here in this moment without the mediation of past conditioning is to be awake. If you are not experiencing through the filter of past memory, then there is a newness to each moment. The Christian equivalent to this is found in the Bible quote, which says, "If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new." So we'll take a 5-minute break and come back for meditation. Thank you. we'll take a 5-minute break and come back for group process. Okay, so we have an opportunity to connect. I'd love to hear from everyone and just see what's happening, anything coming up, any questions. Are you there, Tayama?
I am here.
Excellent.
I just want to make a little note that I have a couple people from yesterday's list that we didn't get to that were promised to be by queue. So if that's okay, we're going to start today with Jonas.
Awesome. Hi, Jonas.
Hi, Dan. Hi, everybody. Lot of fear now. Talking.
Sorry, I missed what you just said there.
I just said that there's a lot of fear coming up, being in the queue right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not really like I have a question.
Where do you feel that fear in the body right now?
Well, it started here in the chest, and now it's kind of transforming into like a vibration in the hands, and then again in the chest.
Mm-hmm. Is that fear there in the practice as well?
Sometimes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
what is your practice right now? Like in the last meditation, what's happening in your meditation?
Well, it's kind of like I'm going through, not, I would say in the general theme, I'm going through like periods of intense identification with like the seeking and like a sense of complete desperation, and like there's just, yeah, it's like an existential, yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
desperation, despair, I don't know how to put it really. And then as I just move through my day, or through the retreat, that sometimes has an opportunity to just kind of drop away, or
Mm-hmm.
with whatever is coming up. And then in the meditation, sometimes they actually intensify that seeking energy, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes I can be there with whatever comes up, and sometimes they just intensify this, I need to get somewhere
Mm-hmm.
thing. It just, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's it sounds like the classic kind of process that we're going through. Like the equanimity is sometimes there, sometimes it's not. It's good that you're seeing that mind, and that seeking part of it. As we make that more and more conscious, then eventually that can relax, and we can just sort of come into being in the moment. Are you what are you working with in your like, are you working with a technique right now, or are you doing self-inquiry in the meditation? Or?
Well, um, whenever I work with the technique or anything like that, it really activates going in a full identification somehow. Like there's no space where I can observe when I do techniques, when I try to observe something. So the only way that I found that kind of works at the moment is really going into more of a relaxation and being also fine with all the waves that's coming, whatever on And I think there is also some point of a question, which is like, when I'm in this kind of space and then identification starts to happen, I feel like at some point, like either I can snap out of it at some point rather quickly, or it really intensifies in this spiral of identification. And I'm kind of asking myself, is it useful at this points to just stay in the identification and sit through it, because that feels really unproductive to me, and it feels like that's what I've been doing for a very long time, like forcing and sitting still, and like, but it's the mind trying to force everything to be still, and it's like I create so much suffering that
Yeah, I think you know, when that identification comes, if there is really a sense of overwhelm, you know, and the equanimity is completely gone, then yeah, it can be unproductive. You know, it can be very unproductive. So I would say, you know, whatever you're doing, it sounds like you're working in the right direction. Like whatever, my philosophy is whatever works to get the mind to settle, you know, to start to, you know, to, if, you know, so if the techniques and those things are not, you know, if there doesn't seem to be space, then, you know, that's not working. So whatever works, whatever you're doing to allow that mind to drop and or to come to a place of more peace, and we want to lengthen those times of just being here, and so whatever's doing that, you know, so if you know, it's a technique or just sitting or just, you know,
it's like it's like when that happens, it just happens, and then I can kind of stay with it for a while. But whenever I go into like this I have this mindset accumulated with meditation that it's something with the doing. So whenever I'm doing this and then doing something, of course, it's like intensifying that stuckness. But when I just go through the day or do something or move somewhere, suddenly it's just everything's fine. I'm just here, and then I can stay with this for quite a while, actually. But yeah.
That's an important insight. So that's really good. So if whatever the mind thinks it's doing, you know, that is creating suffering, then you can let that go. You know, all of that doing, and yeah, just stay with whatever is allowing you to just be with more sense of ease. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you, Jonas.
No, that was also my feeling, but I was somehow still pushing through it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, sometimes it can, you know, the equanimity comes and goes. And one of my teachers said, you know, we have to even be equanimous with that, you know, with that equanimity coming and going. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Razzie.
Hello, Dan.
Hi, Razi.
Something that was said yesterday by the first person who shared, Rufina, I believe, it made a few things conscious for me, the patterns. I used to be a normal person, I think something like that, before I got on this path. Without going to the big story of it, what became conscious after hearing her share and then hearing you share also, many years ago, between 10, 15 years ago, I came to a point where I thought I was at the point of completely just letting go, just like literally just dissolving and letting go. And there was intense fear that came up, intense fear came up. And and all these scenarios came in my head of what will happen to me. I'm going to be like stuck in a bed, like paraplegic, or people will have to take care of me. I won't be able to function. My family will, like all of these scenarios that came to me, and it sort of paralyzed me. I got scared and I just like snapped back out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I never left the the orientation towards knowing God, truth, myself, whatever. Like I never left the orientation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that I noticed, that pattern. Like I come close and then I get scared and I go back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm playing this game like almost robotically. Like, yeah, I'm sitting, I'm meditating, I go to retreats, but I'm not really breaking through, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
The other that became apparent over 10 years. I didn't even know what self-inquiry was exactly. I did this spontaneously. Um, I have very strong identification with my family. Like I can't separate me from my mom, dad, and my brother. It's like one big thing together.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this inquiry, like I came home one day and nobody recognized me who I was. Like I knock on the door, they open, I'm like, oh hi mom. They're like, they don't know who I am. Nobody, the neighbors, nobody acknowledges who I am. And I think, oh, it's funny, la la la. Then they call the police, like, we don't know who this person is. They need to leave the property. And that did something to my mind and my brain. It really got kind of shut down because I didn't know who I was. Like if they don't recognize who I am, and then I said nobody in the world recognizes me who I am, then what the hell am I? Like it did something to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've never heard of anybody else doing this, but that it kind of messed me up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm like, because we're doing the other inquiry, I flipped it apart. I flipped it the other way. If nobody else acknowledges me, who am I? I didn't have an answer, but then the mind made up a story. Oh, I'm going to be homeless. I'm just going to be walking the street, picking up trash because I don't know who I am, what I'm going to do in my life. So these two things and this family. Oh, sorry. Um,
Sorry, I think there was a internet
yeah,
interruption
yeah.
there. I think that was on my end actually.
Yeah, no worries. So I was saying these two patterns, but then I've been around this for a while. So I go to a teacher, like a retreat. Either I'll escape from them, find whatever reason, I'll find some fault with them if they're good. Or either I had a teacher recently, well, over 3 years ago, who's like, I need to go clean up my family stuff, my emotional stuff, then come back before he'll work with me. And I feel like I'm like in no man's land. Nobody, and like I didn't want to go to a regular person for my, because I didn't feel safe. I didn't think they'd understand what is really going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I don't know exactly what to say, but I can see I need some support, and I don't trust myself. Like I did the retreat last time, same thing. I come close, the energy builds up, and then I'll just escape out. So it feels like this character is going there, but then it just goes back and it just seeking, seeking, seeking. The goal is to seek and then die, like not really get to it. And I see this pattern inside, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm reaching out for help or support because I don't want this to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Mm-hmm.
then one last thing, insight I had in just this last meditation that did a big release for me. It just occurred to me because I was in my meditation, I'm just doing the inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
So the last thing that just came up before this was, it's not me. It's not me. It's like, oh my God, like it's not me. Like all these things that I just described,
Yeah.
it's not me.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, that was the
Awesome.
good news. But
Yeah,
uh
that's a big one. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And so that fear that is coming up, it's amazing how many people, the mind will generate all these worries about what's going to happen if I let go of control, and yeah, I'll be homeless, I'll lose my family, it's and it's all of that is just you know, like you don't lose anything. It's you're all that is lost is this sense of I that is attached to the character. That's it. And everything else, you know, the energy, like life is as it is. The you know, nothing changes on or needs to change on the external. What has changed is just who you are. You know, you wake up from the character. And then you're free. Whatever you know the flow of life is, you're free in that flow of life. So it's nothing. You know, like the suffering in life is when we don't trust life. We don't trust that movement of life, and so we're going against the current. But when we go with the current, um, you know, I've learned to trust life, like to trust, or you could say to trust spirit, or whatever it is that you know, the animating principle of life. So that fear that's coming up, you know, for me, it was extremely helpful to feel the fear, um, you know, at that deepest root level of awareness in the body, like that Vedana level that we were talking about, you know, and completely make it conscious in the body. And if we can, when that fear comes up, if you can just stay with it in the body, like tracking it, feeling the whole pattern of it as it's coming up, you know, if you can feel it energetically, I don't know if can you feel the energy moving in the, so
No, that's my problem is I don't have access to feelings in general. It's just mostly here, thinking
yeah,
mind, analyzing constantly.
yeah,
I
so
don't
that,
have access to
and that's
feeling.
okay. Like it doesn't really matter. Like some people, for whatever reason, some people feel that inner energy, some don't. But if you can track the fear, like can you feel the fear in the body at all? Can you?
No, it's just a thought. It's just I experience mostly thoughts. I don't experience
Okay.
somatically things in the body much. I don't have access to it.
Okay. Well, that to me is that's important information then. So I would, when that fear comes up, really try and track it in the body. Like see if there's any subtle change in the body, because there always is. There's always, you know, whenever we have a thought, especially like a fearful thought, there'll be some sensation in the body, you know, maybe some contraction happening. There'll be a subtle change in the breath, you know. So if you can, you know, when in that moment when it's coming up, really attune to what's happening in the body, and gradually we can start to, you know, once it's made conscious, then those contractions or knots can release, and that energy can move.
Is there a practice you would recommend to do that rather than just generally just sitting and trying to observe that, or that is the practice?
I would say like uh, the Vipassana body scan
Vipassana.
is probably
I've done
the,
Vipassana. I've done it a few times, the course, but
yeah. And how so what was it like? Like, were you able to feel the sensations?
yeah, I feel sensations mostly like in my hand, fingertips, some
Yeah,
here and then nothing there. And
yeah,
when I'm doing it, I just get lost in my thoughts. I'm not able to even, sometimes it takes me half an hour just to complete one top to bottom because I get
yeah,
lost in thoughts.
yeah. So it sounds like that, you know, that would be an area
Okay.
to deepen the practice for sure. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I
Yeah.
would go with that. And then that fear, you know, it doesn't, you know, like there's different ways of dealing with it, but to me that, you know, the energy that is going into that fearful pattern, if we're, you know, we're not going into the mind, we're not feeding the mind, we're staying in the
Mm.
body at that sensory level, then, you know, the mind loses, that fear loses its power, and it becomes more of an energetic experience. And that same energy is literally what, um, you know, that it's our life energy. So it's, you know, the same energy that's going into the fear is the aliveness of life.
So work with the energy. Okay, got it. Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Or you don't even need to call it energy, just subtle sensation, you know,
So
in
some
the body.
sensation.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
then the question about that feeling separate. from family wanting to be there, but then needing to be away so I can be on my path, because they don't really understand exactly what my path is. But there's a lot of love and bonding, but I'm in this no man's land, this push and pull. Any recommendation how to deal with that on a regular basis?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, you know. And I've been there, you know. I've been in relationships where yeah, there seems to be a conflict between, you know, the family life, and people see you, you know, they know you as a certain way, they know you as the character, and when you stop behaving as the character that they know, then there's friction, and
Yes.
yeah, so I would say just make it conscious, you know, like you're already aware of the pattern, you know, and yeah, just trust that inner direction. And all I would say is there doesn't have to be a split, you know. It doesn't have to be this or that. It can be this and that as well. And
Thank you. I
sometimes,
think I'm too focused on the outcome, and that versus I think what I got from the retreat so far is to be honest, you know, and then to let go. I'm trying to control everything, my whole family dynamics, and my mind can't do it, and I get overwhelmed and shut down.
yeah,
So
yeah. I think it comes back to what Krishnamurti would always say: no thoughts, no problem.
I don't mind what happens.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, awesome.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
man.
thank you.
William.
Hey Dan, how's it going?
Good. Hi, William.
It's good to see you again.
You too.
Um, I I wanted to just kind of make a comment and also just talk with you a little bit about the video, and then kind of like another way to think about what you were saying that might help people understand a little bit. Um, in in my own study and practice, it's been helpful to think of like the different stages as levels of subtlety. And so like awakening is definitely like the first step. Like it's a necessary, absolutely, you must have the awakening to, you know, like the big self, the sense of presence before the rest of the path is even really available. But then after that, you know, all the sankharas and samskaras come, and you do all the really hard shadow work and the dissolving and all of that stuff. And you have to do that in order to be able to be subtle enough to start to like really be solid in the moment and to be able to like really see clearly the perceptual stuff. And so like the next phase after awakening would probably be like non-dual, where, you know, like this and that and inside and outside and all those like really subtle places that your mind is creating a sense of, you know, a self, if you will, or an identity. Those can all, because those are all still conditionings and they still dissolve in the same way that sankharas dissolve when you're able to put your attention on them consistently and have that dissolving power. And then anatta, I think the only reason that Buddhists label anatta, like the no self insight, as like the higher insight is just because it's the most subtle, or like the next most subtle in the progression. In that, like, if you have a sense of identity that's still,
Oh, we lost your, you got muted there somehow.
sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. So like once non-dual has happened, and that's hard to imagine, but kind of like once you're there, then there's still kind of a subtle sense of presence, a subtle sense of time and space, a subtle sense of past and future, and even a subtle sense of like stuff and consciousness, you know, and those being not completely the same. And so I think anatta doesn't mean no self as much as it means no identity, like the actual ability to identify with anything. When all of those things sort of collapse simultaneously, you just get a like a whirlwind of like just pure sensation. And you know that's why they say in the seen only the seen, and the heard only the heard. Like anatta is that it's no identity more than it is no self, but it just everything breaks and there's no way for identity to attach to anything anymore. Like you just couldn't do it even if you wanted to. And I think that's why anatta is like the big key to no suffering, because you can't find a sufferer anymore when your identity literally can't latch on anything. But you have to get so subtle to get to that last insight that I think it's super rare, but there are people that have done it. But I think, anyways, it's interesting to think about that rather than like the duality of self and no self. There's kind of like, it's helpful just to see that, it gets subtler and subtler and subtler until there's just a breaking point at which there's no way for the mind to create a linear progression that it could ever call anything, so that's like identification itself disappears. And then, after anatta, there's like emptiness, which is probably beyond the scope. But, do you resonate with that way of thinking about it, or?
Yeah, to me, it's like when, yeah, like I think as a descriptor, like the language is very difficult, so to me, it's like in the depth of meditation and inquiry, when mind and
Yeah.
body have dropped off, then we can come to know what that is pointing to, but we know it directly. We don't, so the descriptor will always be complete,
Yeah.
like to me, or yeah, incomplete. If I, like the words I use sometimes, rather than saying no self, I would say, no self and no other than self, which to the mind
Yeah.
it's sort of nonsensical. So, but to me that, it takes you to the threshold of language. So to me
Yeah.
it is
Like a collapse foreground and background to the point where like there just isn't anything to latch on to.
Yeah,
But
the once the mind, that analytical mind has dropped away, then there's just what they say, the great reality, that everything is as it
yeah.
is. Yeah.
But to actually see it as it is, you got to go into those perceptual filters. Like you got to literally be able to see like this and that almost simultaneously and let those grind down until there's just no difference. And then when there's no difference, it's that way all the time, not just in meditation, but all the time. And so like then you're all the time in non-dual. And then after that, you do the same thing with the extremely subtle filters for anatta. And if you can get there, you eventually get to that point where like, now even all the time, there's no possible way to create a self because perceptually it just isn't there. Or like there isn't, it's not even a self, it's identity at all. Like it just isn't there anymore. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like in my own path, really close to this non-dual point where I'm working with breaking down those perceptual filters. And it's just been really interesting to kind of see this progression from gross to subtle. And after a very, very long time of sankharas and misery, like finally the power and the stability is there to be able to see like I'm finally just realizing like, okay, once you have this power, you can see perceptually like this and that at the same time, or inside and outside at the same time. You can kind of like hold them in your mind with really high concentration, and then they dissolve.
So here's a question. So
Yeah.
who is the I that is breaking down those perceptual filters?
So that dissolves too. The sense of like doing and what's happening is another duality. And so like you can hold that as well, like doing, or like, is this happening on its own or am I doing it? You can hold those simultaneously and you can feel those collapsing as well. So it's not, so it's like there's a bunch of these dualities that are sort of like grinding down simultaneously. And I think that when they get to them, get to the middle, they'll sort of break. But I don't know, it's cool. It's really cool to see like how different things are starting to look as those are getting thinner and thinner.
Hmm. Yeah, to me, the way I like to speak about it is,
Yeah.
like the five skandhas, it's really, we're just seeing how it works. We're just seeing
Yeah.
seeing the operations that are usually unconscious. And then when
Yeah.
we see them, that's it really. It's just making them conscious. And yeah, so
Yeah.
I
And
don't
the key is it
usually,
was always that way, but it just was literally conditioning that had to dissolve, and you had to be able to see it clearly enough for that to dissolve. But once it does, boom, it's
Yeah.
gone, and
Yeah.
then you're there
Yeah, that's
where you've
it.
always been.
Yeah. However, the language is, I don't usually use words like grinding down and stuff,
Yeah,
but
that's how it feels to me because of the energy
yeah,
that I can sense. But
yeah,
yeah,
if you're, as long as you're making it conscious, that's
yeah,
beautiful. Yeah. Hmm.
cool.
Yeah.
Anyways, I
Thanks,
just wanted
William.
to share that. It's been
Yeah.
getting more and more clear, so I thought it was
Yeah.
helpful.
Thanks, William. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cindy.
Oh, good. Hi, Dan and everybody.
Hello.
Um, so this has been happening throughout the whole retreat. And this comes from your introduction talk when we first started, and you said that this meditation retreat is an invitation to sit, to not react to whatever is coming up in the mind and body, but at the same time, we don't want to go into overwhelm.
Yeah.
There's a sort of middle ground way with this to distinguish between real pain or pain that is really the intelligence of the body saying this is too much.
Yes.
We never want to brutalize the body, so we want to recognize when the body needs to be taken care of, but we also want to know when the pain is what you would call karmic pain or pain from the samskaras or these past imprints.
Hmm.
And these kinds of pains come up when we're sitting. So this karmic pain, this habit pattern of the mind, we want to not react to that pain. We want to remain equanimous and just allow these sensations to arise and pass away. This is really how we free energy from these patterns, is just to remain still and allow it to go away. Okay, so when I'm meditating, I have to be against a wall. And the middle of my back around my kidney area, after maybe 20 minutes starts to hurt. So I put like a roll towel in various spots to relieve that pressure.
Hmm.
And the back of my neck, I have to keep moving it about every minute because it builds up so much pressure that I have to crack it. And this has been going on for about 35 years. So I've had it for a long time.
Hmm.
And it really interferes with meditation because it's hard to get deep when I have that pain and I got to crack it. And doing an hour is really pushing it. 2 hours is just nuts. And then with that, so those are like real pains, but then I get like, I have restless leg, and being able to sit, I'll sit in various positions. My body just wants to move. I never sit still. I'm always moving. I've done this forever. And places that I've worked, we've gone to long meetings. I can't sit. I'm always squirming in my seat. So having to meditate is difficult. So I have an opportunity to go to a Vipassana retreat that's close by here. And I'd really love to do that. But they like meditate for 10 hours a day at various points throughout the day. And I'm freaking out because, I got to move and I have to do all this stuff. And I don't know if that's acceptable because I haven't been to it. This isn't really my first retreat I've ever been to. So I just wanted to ask you, how do I deal with something like this? And can I move? Is that okay? Kind of thing.
Hmm. So is it the SN Goenka Center, the Vipassana Center, like the Dhamma.org?
It's it's in Queensland in Australia.
Yeah. Hmm.
Is that what you're asking?
Well, just at which like there's a lot of different Vipassana traditions,
Oh,
but
I don't.
it's probably the SN Goenka tradition, I would think. Did you go? Was it the Dhamma.org website that you went on?
Oh, I don't know. My partner just because when we were in the area where it's about 3 hours away from us, he says that's where that retreat is. That
Okay.
because we both want to. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So first, those retreats, you can definitely meditate 10 hours a day, but they don't force you to meditate 10 hours a day. I think there's only maybe 4 hours where it's like mandatory sits, or maybe 4 or 5 hours or something like that. And they do, like, sometimes they'll have a meditation of strong determination, but it's not as strict as like a Zen center or something like that. Where usually the Zen
Okay.
center, like, they're watching you, and they'll like shout at you or hit you with a stick or something if you move. So, but
Gosh.
so it's not like, in terms of the rigidity of it, it's not as extreme as some. But I would say, like, so for those issues, have you done any like yoga, qigong, that type of thing?
No,
So
no.
so that could be something that, for me, that was huge on my path. Is I did a couple of years of, quite a bit of hatha yoga, and my issues were different than yours, but I at the beginning couldn't sit for long periods. My hips were not open, and the energy wasn't flowing up the spine, and doing 2 years of that yoga got the body to a point, like, I'm not that, not a yogi in that sense. I'm not really in all that flexible or into that, doing those asanas, but it got my body to a point where I could sit for long periods of time, and it was really helpful on the path.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And what
Or
kind of yoga did you do?
just like a regular kind of hatha yoga, just
Oh,
the stretchy kind of yoga,
oh, okay. Yeah, I've never
Yeah.
done any of that, but sure, yeah, that might help me because it's really difficult to sit still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can really help to open up the spine, get the flow, whatever muscles are there. It could help to, just be able to, have the body in a um, more of a state of ease. So that's just like a practical thing. Or qigong can be amazing for that as well. Um, yeah, so whatever works to help with that. And then, as you're working with that as well, there's always kind of two ways or two approaches. So that's sort of an external approach. And then, there are times in our practice where, like, the discomfort that's coming up, the restlessness in the leg and all of that, sometimes the energy can sort of break through that in the practice as well, when we really surrender. And if you're doing the Vipassana retreat, it's a great opportunity to explore that. So when you don't move, allow the energy will continue to move, but it can sort of break through, and it can create new pathways in the body, and there's sort of an alchemy that happens there.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Greg.
Hello.
Hi, Greg.
Yeah, what I wanted to ask about, well, first of all, I should say, yeah, the retreat has been so helpful. Especially, yeah, the whole thing has been wonderful. Especially, yeah, like the reminder to be aware of the mind that kind of has this whole enlightenment project that's doing the whole thing and trying to understand it and like figuring out the best way and the best teacher and tradition and technique, etc. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's been really helpful to look at that. I guess I had a question. There's this kind of like slight mental hang up or question or something that's been in the background for a little while now, where a few years ago there was like this glimpse or experience or recognition, and then like it seemingly was very short, but it does feel like things have kind of are like permanently different in some way that's significant but very subtle. um and at the same time it also it feels kind of like it's lost, or like the recognition's not there. Like if I ask myself now, like, what's my identity? Like, who am I? I mean, I'm kind of still identified with the person. It's a little bit different, but I am. Like, that's kind of where I'm operating from.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so there's this sense that like I haven't got it, I haven't seen it,
Mhm.
but also I kind of think I have.
Mhm.
But it feels like no,
Yeah.
I haven't. And so
Yeah.
like when I go and do the dyads, for example, the dyads I've been getting like this seeking energy has been getting really worked up again. Like it's like when I started doing self-inquiry by myself, when I was just like so tense for so long. And that's been my experience in the dyads, where it just feels like I kind of know, okay, I have this idea in my head, like I want that. I kind of need to get this recognition, and it's really hard to like shake that
Mhm.
memory of like what I'm aiming for, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just tense. Yeah.
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 Yeah, you're describing it really well. Like what happens for people once you get a glimpse, because yeah, like, to the mind, it feels like, I'm not there. I've lost it, because the mind only recognizes the state that was there. So when we have an awakening, there's always that phenomena. There's always some mind-body state that is there. But the truth of who you are in that moment, like the awareness that was there in that experience is the same awareness that's here now. There's that awareness that is ever present. So the mind is always looking for the experience, which is temporary. The experience is always coming and going, but that awareness is what we want to recognize, because that when we sort of awaken to that, or recognize that as who we are, then then it's like the unhooking of that identification with that conditioned self. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's very helpful. I what comes up is like something around like the experience of the recognition of the awareness
Mhm.
being like of a different quality. Because
Yeah.
so if I like recognize awareness now, it doesn't feel like when I recognize awareness then.
Yeah.
And so that there feels like there's a gap that I'm trying to like
Yeah.
cross the gap.
Yeah, and that's the mind, the memory of the mind, right? The mind only remembers the experience, but the who you are isn't an experience. It's just who you are. It's the awareness. So yeah, so whatever the mind is looking for is never it. Like the samadhi state can't be remembered. That's the crazy thing. The mind thinks it's remembering it, because it's remembering whatever phenomena was there, the energy, or the, feelings, all of that. But the actual true samadhi state it's not a memory, because it's just presence. It's the dropping off of that, massive skandhas that is creating memories. That's dropped away in that moment, and there's phenomena, and that, that reducing valve comes back online and starts creating memories around it, and thinks, oh, that's what the awakening is. But that's not it. It's just the recognition of that awareness that's ever present. Yeah.
When doing self-inquiry still feels very valuable to me. So when doing it, I should just do it. Not
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like if we just stick with the technique totally works. Yeah, and whatever the mind, if there's like a goal, it's like, based on that past experience or that past glimpse, just let that go, and just completely surrender to the process itself, because it is just a clearing process. That's all it is. We just keep intending to directly experience. More stuff comes up in the mind body, we clear it, clear it, clear it, clear it, and then eventually one of those times it's like we intend to directly experience, and it's like, oh, here I am. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you
Mhm.
so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Noah.
Yes, hello.
I know.
Um, so it's very like diffuse what I want to share. But yeah, first of all, there's one thing, like when I was sharing 2 days ago, like then my ego comes in afterwards, like, yeah, I did that well. And like takes ownership of that, and it becomes like an ego thing, like the ego did something well. I think you know exactly what I talk about.
Yeah, sounds
And
familiar. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I just want to like put it out there very openly for my own sake. And what happened was in meditation, I think today, it might be yesterday, like, yes, that is going on and it is welcome and it's okay. Like that energy, you are welcome to be present also. That is not a problem. And that like opens up for the appreciation of my own greatness.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, there's a level. Oh, I think I'm frozen here.
Yeah. You didn't hear anything I said, right?
It's something cut out there. Yeah, so I did hear what you said, and it sounds like I didn't hear. There was about 10 seconds. Maybe just
Yeah, I saw when you
repeat.
froze. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
okay.
saw when you froze.
Yeah, yeah. If you can
So what I
repeat.
said was, yeah. So you heard like feeling love for that energy, also
Yeah,
allowing it to be present,
yeah.
and that opens up to really appreciate the greatness in me. And it's like I feel very like grateful and love for myself having this beautiful unfolding.
Hmm.
And it's like a very beautiful
Yeah.
thing watching myself in this whole process. It's flowing so beautiful, and there's so much things energetically, most energetically falling off, working with it, vibrating, falling off, and all these insights are appearing. And it's a beautiful thing happening.
Wonderful. Yeah, that is a huge insight, when we can love that, even that part of us, the part that is kind of diluted or is it's just doing its thing, right? It's the little self is just it takes ownership of things and whatever it's doing. But as long as we're not identified with it, we can just smile at it like a little kid, and it's like caring for a child, and you just love them in spite of their delusion. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I find is that love and acceptance, then there is a golden nugget behind that thing. So that opens up for in this case, like appreciating the greatness that is also present. So it feels like there's also a golden nugget behind those things that I find that. And I want to continue on this. So and there's a few different like things there, but so 2 days ago in the diets, like facilitator asked, like, so who is like saying that? And then I was speaking from ego, but I was like okay with being the ego. So then like, well, it's actually a non-question or a non-imperative, because the ego and that awareness is actually the same awareness shining through all the way through all those filters and all the way back to where it's like ineffable. So it didn't feel like I needed to distinguish between at what level is, because yes, it is speaking right now from the ego, but that is not separate from this other awareness. And this has been coming up now lately, like today. I'll tell you, because I've been having a lot of equanimity and being able to just sit and and my mind goes all different routes, and I am receiving a lot of teachings. It's like I am being led in the hand through all these different insights and hurdles and so on. And so I got to like, I do not exist. Like right now, I'm here, I do not exist at all. Like that is the experience in meditation. But then like, okay, I do not exist, so there's nothing here at all. And then boom, it appeared. But here is like I. And then it came to me, oh, so this is now I am face to face with the idea or the thought of I. So this is the I thought that you referred to. I never caught up on it before. I never really heard you saying it. But then it like, oh, this is what Dan is talking about. And there was a great conflict because I am in the experience, I do not exist. But here is the I thought, and it's not reconcilable. So I was fighting with the I thought, like, no, go away. I do not exist. And this is interesting. Yeah. So what happened was I am in resistance. I am fighting this thing here. But what then happened as I stopped fighting even that, well, of course, and then it like opened up, and the recognition of emptiness is form and form is exactly emptiness. So I was no longer holding on to that unconscious assumption that it has to be either or.
Yes.
And then it became available, that truth of it, and realized. And like, so the unlimited mind merged with the limited mind, or the limited mind actually expanded to like limited mind being form was also exactly emptiness, unlimited mind. So that was realized in that moment. It was very beautiful, very, very beautiful.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's it. You expressed it beautifully. To me, yeah, it transcends, but it also includes, and that's it. It's integral. It's it's all the one mind, but yet, somehow there's the separate self is there as well. So it's not this or that. Yeah, it's beautifully expressed.
And that has been the teaching for me, and the big learning the past 2 days to, like, yes, there is the seeker, but always when there is the seeker, I mean, the seeker is by definition striving for a goal, right? So there is non-acceptance of what is, but there is always that ineffable awareness, even when that seeker identification is going on. So if I just accept that seeker and being completely fine with being that very small contracted thing, what happens then? Boom, it opens up that I am also that. And well, then I have found. And then the seeker can be, but there is no energy for it to be because it's found.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
That's it. So yeah, it has to do with resistance. Like as long as we drop like the resistance, because that little, the identified self is just a little pattern of resistance, and so then we drop resistance to that, and then it opens.
And then content is completely unimportant. Like that's my point. It's completely
it's perfect as it is.
One small thing. So what appeared to me as I was like in the experience of recognizing emptiness is form and form is exactly emptiness, like the truth of that, what appeared to me was that, okay, so these different truths that masters have said, like the Buddha said that, or maybe not the Buddha, but who said it? I don't know exactly what it was.
It was the Buddha, yeah.
Okay. So taking that truth, sitting with that truth, not from a mind level, but really sitting with it, knowing it to be true, and then allowing the unconscious assumptions that I am holding on to that is not, that is blocking that truth to be directly available to me. If I sit and stay with that truth, those will become visible eventually if I stay with it. Like that could be a way to come face to face with those unconscious assumptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. That to me, that it feels like a form of inquiry, you know. So instead of, you know, just inquiring into who I am, just, you know, realize that truth, and a similar thing will happen. You know, everything that's blocking that truth unconsciously will come up to the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah. The same process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I'm happy.
Awesome.
So,
Me too. Yeah. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Doris.
Hi, Doris.
Hi there. So I feel very tense about the question, who am I, that I have to find out. I feel like this striving is just making me unhappy, that I have to find out who I am, and that I won't be happy until I find out. And so my whole life is about striving. And I'm pretty old. I'm so afraid I'm going to die. I won't find out who I am before I die. And I can't be happy until I find out who I am. I can't just live my life and accept it as it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the striving can be dropped. The striving can be relaxed and released. Like that part of you, you know, that wants it, that is striving. You know, I think you've recognized that it's not working. The striving isn't working, right? So that mind, the mind that is striving, you know, it's an incredible burden for that mind to try and have to do that, and it is suffering. You know, it's the mind is suffering. So it can be relaxed. You know, when we come to that point of doing the self-inquiry, you know, inquiring directly into who we are, there's no striving. You know, if the mind is striving, then it, you know, that's the habit pattern of the mind, but that's exactly what we have to drop in order for, you know, stillness to be there. You know, the striving is movement. It's the movement of the mind, the wanting something, but the mind doesn't even know what it's wanting. You know, it just wants something other than what is in that moment. It wants whatever it thinks the truth is. So we can relax that mind, you know, and it's an incredible release, an incredible lifting of a weight. When we finally relax that mind, we realize it doesn't have to do it. It doesn't have to seek. That what it's seeking is actually, when it relaxes, the thing that it's seeking, you are right here. It's a cosmic joke, the whole thing. It's
I don't know how I can relax and still inquire.
it's like recognizing that striving, you know, it was just seeing that striving in the mind, you know, that searching the mind, you know, but who is watching the mind? Who sees that mind and that struggle? Who's watching the mind? So inquire directly into that one. You know, that's the direct inquiry. Who's watching the mind?
Just to have to ask that makes me tense. You know, just to have to do anything makes me tense, except just to, you know, to live moment by moment and just as it is. And
Yeah, and that, you know, feeling that tension as well, if the tension is coming up, then, you know, the practice, the technique is to just observe what comes up as a result of that inquiry. So there may be, you know, there's the clearing process then, you know, so we, you know, the imperative comes, you know, we surrender the seeking. We just become aware of, you know, who is being here. Just become aware, or just be, you know, in that moment. Or you could say be still and know, whatever works, you know, to just kind of drop into presence, you know, and then, yeah, whatever comes, you know, attention in the body, whatever, then we share that, and it can be cleared then. And we just, it's a process, so we just keep doing it, keep doing it.
I'm okay with just being present. It's the question that drives me crazy. But I mean, I can just be present and
Yeah.
without striving. I
So
can do that.
So the thing that, and sometimes it takes a while for this to really land, but it isn't a question. You know, the mind thinks that it's looking for an answer, but it's an imperative. You know, it's, you know, your partner is really saying, convey to me, you know, I want to see who you are, like not with words, but with your entire being. You know, it's deeper than just an answer. It's not a question. So the mind will keep looking for an answer on that conceptual level. But what it is, you know, as we go through this stripping away, there's a coming into our natural state. You know, so you become more and more who you really are, you know, just more free, more expressive, more of life coming through. Yeah.
Can Kriyas, I have major Kriyas, can they work on this with the samskaras to diminish the samskaras, even though I don't have conscious understanding of what it's about and what's happening?
Yeah, I think with the kriyas, like if those motions and movements are coming, that's a way of you know, the energy rewiring you. Yeah, so we don't really, I don't understand kriyas at all. I don't really know, you know, on a deep level what is happening there. I trust the intelligence of it, that it's doing stuff, and it's beneficial. It's rerouting of energy. So yeah, I think the less concepts we have about it, the better, the more free it can be. Yeah.
So maybe it can help eliminate the samskaras or diminish them.
Yeah, I think it, you know, when that rewiring is happening, it's, you know, the energy that's going in the samskaras gets rerouted into new ways, new energy pathways. So yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And then one last thing is, how can we differentiate between following the current versus following our mind, our small mind? How do we make choices? How do we know which is which?
Yeah, so if you're in a current and you start going against the current, it's hard work. There's a struggle there. You know, there's resistance there. You know, if you think about a boat, you know, in a river turning against the river, you know, as soon as you turn against the river, there's resistance there. So it's like what we've been talking about, you know, the preferences within the ego structure are that resistance. You know, so we want something other than what is. You know, we want something other than what is actually happening, which is, what is happening is the current. You know, it's what's happening now. It's like life is doing this, but I want this.
In retrospect, it can seem like a big mistake. I think I'm following the current, and then my whole life gets messed up because and it feels like I made a big mistake. It wasn't the current after all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it happens. Yeah, it's happened to me too. Yeah, and that's why, you know, energy explores, you know, goes here and there. It's not always clear. It's not always linear. And yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Great.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doris. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Glow.
This work is so beautiful. And I am so grateful to you and to everyone supporting you. And my last 24 hours have been exceptionally interesting. Yesterday, as soon as I began meditating, I was meeting an upwelling of energy that came out in the form of what I would call releasing, like full body, like, ugh, just impossible for me to duplicate, because when it's happening, it's just happening. And so for a couple of years now, I have started more and more to experience my body primarily as energy. And this kind of releasing has happened in other scenarios, not meditation, and usually laying prone. And so I have looked at it as rewinding. But what was happening yesterday was just like that level of experience, like so magnified. And so it felt so outside any version of bodily control that was, of course, a tiny bit disorienting. And then, so that was meditation, and it was regular. I obviously wasn't keeping track of exactly how many times my body was releasing. But then when it came to the dyads, as soon as you began talking and introducing us to the dyad process that last night, my legs were uncontrollably quivering, and I just felt this building and building and building of energy. And so I was truly and genuinely startled when in my second round, in my first dyad, there was like a volcanic explosion of some version of energy that was so unfamiliar to me, and so it's going to sound strange, but it did not feel emotional. It felt like something else. It felt more like a storm, more like a volcanic explosion, something that was just coming from something actually outside of me. And not to try it, I don't mean to bypass or say it wasn't personal. I can imagine it was, but the actual experience of it was truly as if I were a puppet with, it was extremely difficult to come back and focus on my partner. And so I was quite lost in it. And
so what led up to that? What was happening right before that happened?
so in my first meeting of the imperative, it was fairly calm. I was able to, I'm doing my best to live in this space outside of thought. And then as I was listening to my partner, it was as if my whole body was vibrating. and my legs were just like literally, shimmying. I sit cross-legged most of the time, and so it was just building, 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 and I knew that I might, cry or something like that, but it came out as like something much more like a primordial scream.
Mm.
So,
And this is as you were with the witness?
no, I apologize. When I started talking after the
Okay,
witness
I
had
see.
finished.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was building, and I was doing my best to be present and
Yeah.
just hold the space for the
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
speaking and for my partner, and
Yeah.
and so and then if I can just put it in a slightly longer time frame, so after we completed last night, it was 6:30 here in Oregon, but I went upstairs and just went to bed, and the releasing continued,
Mhm.
and I just was in this crazy space of pain and discomfort. They were just braided together, oscillating between pain and discomfort and releasing, and so much energy that I felt like my body might just break apart. And I could not sleep. And that went on for some hours, and then gradually it started to calm down. But I think that rooted in this, and this morning I'm better, but I've been off camera because I'm still twitching. And I'm grateful that right now I'm quite steady. So what arose in part last so that some of that content was generational
Mhm.
generational trauma.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of emotional work, and I understand that when meeting shadow, there could probably always be more.
Mhm.
And so, but I have by and large felt fairly peaceful the last couple of years, and I don't even know why it's necessary to know what the source might be. It was just so interesting that it felt so almost foreign.
Mhm.
And maybe that's what it is, when that energy is so pushed down that when it finally arises, it seems like it's someone else's.
Mhm.
And so I'd love your feedback after that
Yeah.
happened.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah. So from what I've seen, in these dyads, it's incredible what can come up. Like you mentioned, like primordial scream and the energies that come. Really, sometimes we never know what it is, but it feels like for some people, what shows up is, it's for you on your path, whatever that is. If it is generational healing, whatever the story is, we might not know exactly, but what my feeling on that is, it is like Carl Jung said, there is a collective unconscious, and we're all part of that. We're all part of it. So when we access certain parts of ourself, in meditation and dyads, we're not just healing this body. We're sometimes moving stuff through on a more collective level as well. At least that's my feeling. Like I don't really know, but to me that makes sense. And from what I've seen, there are it's almost like archetypal things, pain or collective experiences that are possible. And, people will move through almost like birth experiences and death experiences and huge energy reconfigurations in the body. And yeah, and I trust the process. I trust that what is happening is, there's an intelligence to it, and what it is may become clearer. You might have, some insights that come as to, a story about it, or not. It might just be, more of a rewiring that's happening, and a energetic kind of transformation. Yeah, but from what I've seen, it usually, the energy will sort itself out, the twitching and all of that. And, sometimes grounding is good as well. Just going for a walk barefoot in nature can help to just sort of integrate and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then during meditation, if it were coming up again, would you recommend just sitting and letting it flow, or to actually get up and turn it into a walking meditation?
Are you able to, like, if you lie down with it, do you typically fall asleep if you're lying down, or would you be able to?
I do not fall asleep. I'm not a napper.
Then it might be, I find like lying down, if you don't fall asleep, then it can be a way to move the energy, like let it kind of do its thing more easily. And
Okay.
but I guess I don't really have, advice on that. It's just whatever works for it. I know what it's like integrating that kind of energy. So sometimes, just observing it and surrendering as best as possible, just being equanimous with it as much as possible, just being conscious with it. That's all there is to do, really, and just let it do its thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Margie.
Hi there.
Hi, thank you so much for this. I'm so glad for my friend who did his this dyad process through Feel Free, and I'm a Course in Miracles, and he's my teacher, and he guided me on this.
Awesome.
He said it's time I got rid of my guilt and shame, which I know is the egoic mind. And I've appreciated all the dyads. They've just been heart opening. Who I am. But I have one question, and it seems so trite, and I keep raising my hand and putting it down. I'm going, no, sure that it's something that needs to be asked. I seem to be getting in, we talk about our work here, doing our work, and then interfacing with our friends and family. Yeah. And that's where the conflict happens for me. And I work with a neighbor, and we're teachers, and I'm a permanent substitute teacher with disabled individuals, and I absolutely just find myself enjoy working with them. But this teacher consultant has decided she's compound problems. And before I left for my daughters, she said, I caused them all. And I laughed. I'm going, no one can blame someone else. We have to blame ourselves, number one. And number two, I didn't take the days off and convince other teachers to take days off. And I didn't publish the Facebook pictures. You did all of that, not me. But there's this extreme, because we live in this condo association, of how to live my life and know that I didn't cause her problems. And I didn't. But yet the ego wants to just grab this in my meditations and say, you're at fault. You're at fault. And I go back and forth. No, I'm not at fault. This is not my problem,
Mhm.
but they're there.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and this is this is what Eckhart Tolle talks about, the pain body, right? And like, so other people's pain body, our own pain body will pick that up, and it loves to go to town with that kind of material. It loves, yeah, it's yeah. So, and so to me, like, to really make that conscious, it's exactly what we're doing here. Like, you're in the right place. You're doing this work, and so whenever that comes up in the mind, those thoughts, the memories of that experience or that interaction, that those thoughts come up, and then if we can feel it in the body first, like, feel, how is that moving in the body? How is that triggering? Because it's always in the body first. So if we can catch the movement of it, and keep our attention in the body, and not feed those thoughts. The mind, like, that pain body, it loves to, when the thought comes up, it'll replay the story, but if we, instead of replaying the story, stay in the body and feel how that's moving in the body, the contractions. And if we can make that conscious, then it can really start to release. And then eventually, it is like a wave. It's big at the beginning, but then it's like it settles down and down, and then eventually it'll not be as grabby, I guess.
Well, I just feel a lot of pain for this person. It comes into my heart.
Yeah.
You gave the suffering Jesus with the sword in the heart, and that's what keeps coming to mind, is
Yeah.
this person really hurts,
Yeah.
and how to not make it my hurt,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
do you pray for it? Do you just keep feeling it and it eventually dissipates?
Yeah. It's really like the same process as, like, when we're doing this practice, like, we're not believing our thoughts anymore. We really come to a place where we're watching the thoughts and not believing them. So when we get good at not believing our thoughts, then we also get good at not believing other people's thoughts.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. That really resonates with me. Thank you.
Hmm. Hmm. Thank you.
I think we have time for one more. Do you have time for one more, Dan?
Sure.
We've got 2 minutes. All right.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay, I'll keep it brief. First of all, this has been amazing, so thank you so much. And so interesting, yesterday for the 2 hours, I watched my ego just have a shit fit of boredom and didn't know what to do with itself, that it even found a way to entertain the way it was eating dinner. So it's just been a absolutely fascinating process. My question is, so my wife and I are doing this together. When she first introduced me to some of your work, one of her questions she asked me was to do dyads with each other, and we've done one before the retreat. And then her suggestion was also that she could also be the facilitator while we're doing the dyads together. And of course, my ego had resistance to that. However, like in one of my my dyads, the witness actually played that role as well, and I found it a little off-putting because I wasn't expecting that. So I just wanted to get your perspective on how that would actually operate for the witness to also be the facilitator, especially when you're married for 26 years.
So yeah, well, so first of all, so in our dyads, the witness shouldn't be facilitating or prompting in any way. So if that's happening, that isn't, unless you're doing a dyad with one of our facilitators, then they're trained for that prompting. But there's a very specific way of doing that prompting. So unless somebody has had the flip unless somebody, you know, has had the awakening and sort of, you know, is really clear on that, you know, on who they are. The prompting is not helpful in a dyad. So I would say, you know, like people do dyads without a facilitator all the time. You know, so you don't need a facilitator. You can just do the dyads, do the clearing, and without prompting, without any facilitator. So I would say, you know, you don't need one, basically. You know, just do the dyads and just keep going back and forth, you know, in the roles, and it still works. The technique works whether there's a facilitator there or not.
Yeah, and it did. It was beautiful. We did it in person, and it was really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Yeah, beautiful session, and we'll be back at 2 o'clock. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.